Hello, welcome to In Studio. I'm Ian in Butterfield. In this video I want to present an extract from one of my live streams where photographer Peter provided me with a raw file, and sight unseen I had 3 minutes to edit the raw file in Lightroom. Not only that, I also challenged fellow photographer Rick Bradbury to do the same. After we'd both done our different edits, we then critiqued the image and provided some feedback to the photographer. Hope you enjoy it. Right, okay, Rick, I need my phone. So,
where's the mouse? Where's the mouse?
You got your mouse? Right, let me get the timer going for you.
Let's see. Oh,
3 minutes.
3 minutes.
Your 3 minutes starts now.
Okay, so we have a portrait here, 125th of a second, standard studio shutter speed, f11 ISO 100, 35mm. Okay. Alright, let's go into develop.
You're
now,
in develop.
Within develop, I tend to start in basics and get a decent white balance and so forth first. It's not too bad off the bat, but I do feel it could probably do with a little bit warming up. It's coming to Lightroom at 5,000 Kelvin, thereabouts. And I think it can do with just a little bit of warmth on there. Now I don't know the lights and modifiers that we use at this point. They can affect colour. Let's punch in. Whites look good. That's fine. Now this will not be a full retouch. Let's see. Let's take down some of the highlights just a little bit. I can see some specularity on parts of the skin.
We've got 2 minutes left.
I know, so fine. Which you would normally deal with in Photoshop, but that's part of how it's lit and how diffused or not that the light is. At that point, we'll just take exposure down just a little bit. A little bit of global contrast. There, let's see, shadow wise. Take those down, blacks down just a little bit. And tone curve. What does it look like on medium contrast? A little bit better there. We'll drop that out. How am I doing for time?
1 minute 24.
1 minute 24. Now, I don't know. I would normally make vibrance and saturation adjustments. That's for my cameras normally. We'll go just a little bit. Tighten up mid-tone contrast. It's nice and sharp. Doesn't need too much in terms of sharpening. Detail. Lightroom default color noise.
1 minute.
1 minute. Let's go radius up. Detail. Now, one thing that this does need is, come on Lightroom, right? It's Capture One instead of Lightroom. Anyway, we will do a little bit of a crop. I do feel that we need to be a little tighter on this as a portrait. There's a bit too much dead space, and I don't feel it's of much use being there, so I'm going to crop in a little bit. Good cropping points, by the way, you know, on the arms, not too close to the wrists, but I think a little bit of a tighter composition helps with that.
20 seconds.
Nice. Like I say, specularity that we see on the nose, it can be partly to do with the makeup as well as the light source that's used there as well, but that's pretty much it, just some basic corrections. In fact, I'm going to go a little bit darker on the blacks there, and yeah, that's fine.
Right, okay.
That is
right.
Yeah,
it's hard going, isn't
when
it?
When you're trying to talk
that.
through it as well, it's very different because it does slow you down with what you're doing at that point. But not a whole lot needs doing. Exposure was good on that. It's like the alarm clock, it doesn't want to stop.
No. Hey, it stopped. Right, okay, so I have the image loaded into Lightroom. I've tried very hard not to look at it while I've been getting it in there. So now I shall start the timer and I'll have 3 minutes to do an edit on it. Going now. Right, okay, it's a portrait image, colour portrait, pink. So let's go into the develop module. What am I going to do with it? Right, I think first of all I will make sure all the lens corrections are enabled. So that will sort that out. I think I probably like with this a tighter crop, so I'll just bring that in, take that off, and I think I will crop about here. I don't like cropping below the L's. I think that's a little bit better. In a bit tighter on there. Good histogram on it. Over to basic. Right, okay. Let's have a look at the white balance. I'm assuming that was taken with flash, so I'm going to set the flash white balance on there. Right, the shadows I'm going to bring up, and that's looking fairly reasonable. Profile wise, I'm wondering whether black and white might work well with this, so I'm going to go with my standard black and white profile of black and white 03. Yes, I quite like that, but I do need to bring some more light into those shadows now. I'm just going to bring up the clarity just a little bit on there, a little bit more on the contrast as well. Yes, I prefer that. Do I want a bit of dehaze? No, I don't. With it, reset that. I think I'd quite like a little bit of a vignette on it. So transform. No, not transform. Where am I going? Right, I am going to effects. Just bring the vignette down just a bit. Well, actually make it quite dark, but then feather it off. And how much longer have I got on the counter? I've got a few seconds left. So 3 minutes goes very quickly when you're doing this. So I would say something along those lines, maybe not quite that dark with that. Can I do a split tone in this time? Add a little bit of colour tone on it. Very, very slightly, but the shadows go to the blue. A little bit like that. No, don't like the split toning. I'll take those out. No, I think it's just pure black and white on there. So I think that's going to be my edit. If I've got a second left, I'll go back to the effects and preserve my highlights down at the bottom here on that post. Oh, and the time is up. So that's my edit done. Right. Wow. That was hard going. So now back live to the studio. Let's have a chat about our two different edits, mine and Rick's. Right, and we're back. Right, okay, so as you can see, two very different edits. What we now have on the screen behind us, or in front of us, as far as we're concerned, is the three different edits of the image. So here, find the mouse. Here on the left-hand side is Peter's. No, that's Rick's. That's Rick's. Yep. The one in the middle is mine, and the one on the end is Peter's. I think it's quite interesting that we've approached it differently. Both myself and Rick, we've gone quite contrasty with the image compared to Peter's.
There's not where, yeah, we've got more contrast in there. If you look at the shadows that we have on the cheek cast by the hair, and within the hair, yes, there is a little bit more contrast in there.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say you tend to edit with more contrast than me generally.
Yes, I do. I do. I have a quite contrasty style with and particularly with my black and whites. I like black and whites to be really contrasting.
I mean, I tend to edit myself personally. Most of my work is portrait work, but I tend to edit black and whites more contrasted than colour stuff because it lends itself to that. It's all about highlight, mid-tone, shadow at the end of the day. Three different compositions in terms of the crop. At that point. I mean, I said to Ian earlier on, looking at his edit on the black and white, I wasn't sure on the black and white. Again, these things are all subjective at the end of the day, but I felt that the colour and tones of the dress, I'm going to say, I mean, it's a dress, but looks like a dress, or maybe a top if she's wearing jeans, I don't know, hard to tell.
Can't tell. There's me trying to look over down.
Starts to blend into certain parts of skin tones for me, and it becomes a little bit too similar to work.
Yeah, well, you see, for me, I have always held the view with images that if somebody's dressed in a colour, that I try to use the background to complement the colour rather than contrast.
Right.
And it was, to me, the pink and the blue were too contrasty, and so to actually bring them closer together, black and white was the obvious choice for me on that. In terms of the basic image, and some feedback for Peter on that, it's 35mm lens we determined, wasn't it?
Yeah, I picked up on this as soon as I saw it. A 35mm lens. It's not that you can't shoot portraits with this. I mean, you've got environmental portraits. You could have portraits of two people, so your perspective changes with your working distance having to change. At that point, but for one person up close, I think it can, depending on how the person stood and posed and turned towards the camera, can be a little bit too wide at times. I mean, I don't know what camera it was shot on, whether it was a crop sensor or full frame or what have you. It looks like it may have been a crop sensor, but
I can soon tell you if I go over.
If we have a quick look. I was going to have a look at that when I was doing my edit, and then suddenly realised I haven't got time.
No, you haven't with those sort of challenges. So right, Lightroom module, metadata, and
does it say?
Oh, let's get the full EXIF up. On there, it's a Nikon.
So a crop sensor, so it's a 1.5 for Nikon on the format. Thought it was. It doesn't look quite like it would be full frame, because for the same composition full frame you're going to be closer.
Yeah. So focal length at 35mm is 52, which is it's a little bit lower than I would work with for portraits. I'd normally say 70 to 120, that sort of area.
Now, it's not that you can't shoot portraits with, say, 50mm equivalents, which 35mm for the APS-C format, or 50mm full frame. However, you need to consider your working distance and how the person is shaped, body shape-wise, and how they're turned and posed towards the camera. Because closest elements to the lens will seem larger, you'll get some foreshortening, some distortion and what have you, so you've got to be careful where you place them. At that point, ultimately it's about your working distance and perspective for it. You may have been in a room where you've got 15 people stood behind you waiting to shoot and you can't move back. I get the different scenarios may dictate what you use lens-wise as well.
Yeah.
So it's not kind of pointing the finger at you here, Peter, it's just a couple of points of feedback. One thing I have noticed as well, now whether you would have had control of this during the shoot, on the night, if it was say a meet or a club event, again, I don't know enough backstory, so let us know in the comments if you'd like. F11, loads of depth of field, I get that. However, on that format of the camera and that size of sensor, I would work more than likely f8 to 5.6 range, because you're going to get a sharper image. You'll lose a bit of depth of field, but I think you would have had enough at f8. You've got to be careful of diffraction starting to show. So it's softening of the image.
I don't think we can complain much about the sharpness on that.
It's not bad, but you will see it. If you do two comparable images, same scenario, same subject, and shoot wider open, yes, there are times when you need to shoot stop down for the depth of field required. Totally get that. You'll see the image start to soften, because the diffraction limiting aperture on that format of camera is going to be much lower than it would be on full frame. Yeah,
what I would say about depth of field with that is, again, it's personal preference, but I'd like to see the subject further away from the wall, so that the wall is slightly out of focus behind, to give a depth to it, because that is bang on in focus.
Oh yeah, that f-stop definitely. If the background was small, and let's say you're struggling maintaining her within that background that you've got, then you need to step back and go longer lens. Narrow your field.
Further away and zoom in would do that, and that's also more flattering for your subject as well with it. Lighting wise, a couple of things I would say about it. Again, we don't know whether you had control over the lighting. There's obviously some lighting going on there because I can see the catch lights. It looks like it's an umbrella fill and, well, the main, actually looking like it's using an umbrella for the main light.
It's either that or an octa, given the shape of the catch
possibly,
lights,
yeah, it could be an octa with a fill. Now, I tend to like a little bit more shadowy than that, and I like to have a little bit more. I suppose it's what I was trying to do in the edit, adding that vignetting into the background, where the background's just isn't all even. There's some light difference to it.
Yeah, I mean, it's contrast overall in the image. It's contrast of exposure on your subject, and then the values of your exposure also to the background as well. Inverse square law will play a big part. Working further away from the background will help you if you can. Change those light distances. Most of the time you can. I do it if I come to one of Ian's.
Yeah, he always changes my lights.
Because I like a different level of contrast. I want the fall off to be different.
Yeah.
So I'll make that change. But again, it depends on the scenario that you're in, ultimately. And I get that you can't do that in every single scenario.
Yeah. Okay, I think that's covered about everything for that.
Oh, one quick addition for that, if I may, sorry, Ian, Peter, as well, is... Again, this may have been dictated by where the portrait was made, if it was under a group conditions, because it's not like a one-to-one shoot at that point where you can get to know the person better, but I'd like to see a bit more work on engagement from the subject and expression within a portrait. To me, it does kind of feel like it was shot at an event where multiple people may have been shooting that same set as well, and that's just interaction and one-on-one time, which I totally understand is quite difficult to do in those scenarios, but you'll get a better portrait for it, and sometimes you're talking to them more than you are shooting to get there, really.
Yeah.